I mean, I haven't had a co-host for 2 weeks. It's been weird. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Flick and Reel, your friendly neighborhood fancast. We are your source for news, reviews, and daily discourse. I am your host, Jesse Swift, and I am accompanied, as always, by Mr. Scott Fox. How are you, Scott?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be back in the saddle.
All right. And before we get weird with Wanda, listeners, are you on the go and rarely sitting down long enough to watch a podcast? Don't worry, we have you covered. You can also find us on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. All of our links will be in the description below the video. All right, and as I said last week, Marvel is back. It has been around a year and a half since we've had any new Marvel content, Scott. But here we are. We're into our third episode of WandaVision. And before the show, me and you were discussing the first couple episodes a little bit just to get it out of the way. But let's move into our thoughts on this episode with characters, tones, everything else. Really quick, let me just get a couple minutes of your spoiler-free thought on the episode. How'd you feel coming away from it?
I thought it was really good. One thing that really impressed me about this episode is I feel like total plot, we moved a huge step forward. The first two episodes were kind of laying groundwork, setting the tone for kind of the overall environment and world with which we're living in. And then this episode seemed like, okay, now we're going to take a step forward. We're going to pull back the curtain, see what's actually happening, and see some character progression, see some plot progression as far as the overall characters and everything that's going on with them. So I think I really enjoyed the episode. And versus the first two, I think I told you when we first got on, like the first two episodes for me, really, they were good, but they didn't do anything. Whereas this episode, I felt like something happened, right? In this one, there's, as far as like beef and something to chew on, there's a lot to chew on, a lot happening here. So it was really good for me.
I want to comment kind of on what you said. And as far as like the progression goes, I have a couple different feelings. I've been telling everyone that I really enjoyed the week-to-week format for Mandalorian. I thought it was a lot of fun, and you get like a kind of different adventure, even though they're all connected every week. Now, we've heard from Marvel that they kind of filmed this show and Falcon and Winter Soldier kind of like a really long extended movie, more so than just a TV show. And I think you can feel that. And if you think about watching a movie that's 4.5 hours, 30 minutes a time, 7 days apart, it's torture. And that's kind of how I felt about WandaVision. I really did enjoy the first two episodes, but like you said, they are a bit slower. And if you were to watch this all as a film, in these first three episodes, you just watched them all together leading up to it, I don't think it would have been as drastic, because every movie has to start the story. Anyways, I believe that the third episode was the end of Act 1 for us, where we really start getting into the thick of the mystery. Now, we don't necessarily have more answers, but I think we have a clearer vision, pun intended, on the trajectory that is intended for the show, but also giving us more questions, more things to ask, and then fueling some of the speculation and theories that we've had for the first couple episodes. I really enjoyed this episode. I love, again, Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen's performances are incredible, and it's been a lot of fun to join this ride that Marvel's presented us with.
Yeah, it is definitely different. And I think maybe that was what hit me with the first two episodes. And you said it very well, in that if we think of it as first, second, third act, like we do movies, like every movie, you always break it down by like, first act, second act, and then the culmination portion. And this really was the first act, which, if that's the case, it did a great job of teasing and setting up this next portion. And it really did ask a lot of questions. It left, it revealed enough to keep you really interested. But what I was going to say is, one of the things that I think caught me at the very beginning with this is this idea that I had Mandalorian's format in my head. And this is nothing like Mandalorian's format. Whereas they're strictly 30-minute episodes, even shorter, because you got like 7 or 8 minutes, because so much production goes, 7 or 8 minutes of trailer or of credits at the end. And so really it's a 22 to 24-minute episode that's pretty compact. And they're all three the same length, the same kind of flow for them. But we just see this this completely different approach for how Marvel did it versus how Star Wars did it with Mandalorian. Mandalorian, it's a mega quest with mini quests built in, and this is just all small parts of one bigger individual story. And the great thing is, we're in the third episode, and I have no idea how this might wrap up.
But in the best way.
At all. Yeah, exactly. It makes me like, okay, now I'm curious more. The first two episodes didn't really make me curious. They made me confused and a little bit like, okay, this is good, but what's happening? And it wasn't until the very end of episode 2 when they teased that they were moving to the 60s. And then we see episode 3 where we're into that 60s vibe Brady Bunch that we start to see a pretty good shift.
And I think like you said, the first 2 episodes, it's like they have this curtain of mystery, right? And they're just kind of holding it, and they're just like shaking it in place. And you're like, what's behind the curtain? And we're like, I don't know. Tell me. And then this episode was the first time where they peeled it back a little bit, and like, something's over there, and we don't know what that is. Hopefully we find out some more next episode.
Now that you say that, it makes me think of the magician's scene in episode 2, where maybe that's a little bit of a teaser moment. Did your mustache get caught in your drink there? It's okay. I've had that happen with the beard. But maybe that scene, where Geraldine gets pulled from nowhere into the magic box.
Right.
Well, she doesn't even know why she's in the entire show.
Right. When they're having that meeting with like all the ladies of the neighborhood, she's like, I don't know why I'm here. And it's like, that might be more true than you even intended for it to be.
Absolutely. And there's some real awkwardness to a lot of those things. And with that Catherine Hahn's line, like, I don't know how he does these without a drink. But there's a lot of good stuff. But back to episode 3, the 60s vibe, there's just so much kind of happening so fast. They crammed a lot of stuff into that 25-minute episode.
Absolutely.
So you want to start breaking her down?
Yeah, I was going to say, so usually kind of the way I have this prepared is we kind of talk characters, character by character. And while we do that, we talk a little bit of the plot and the things that happen to these characters. And I just think that separates it a little bit than just doing a, line by line breakdown of the show.
Oh, yeah.
But I do really quickly want to ask how you felt both about the previous 2 intros and then the intro to this show, because I think it's one of my favorite parts of WandaVision is when they do the sitcoms inspired introductions.
Oh, the introductions were great, and it totally had the Brady Bunch vibe. I already mentioned that with the silhouette with the 3 pictures on the sides, going back and forth between Paul Bettany or Vision and Wanda.
And the neighbors.
You can totally tell the homage that they're paying to the older TV shows, and they're trying to tie that in. But it was a fun tribute. But then you also got to see just fun character things. And each one of those, if you really pay attention to the little silhouettes that they have on the sides of the different people doing things, there's some fun stuff inside of those.
There is, like we were mentioning earlier before the show, is I think each one of these episodes really encourages a rewatch and a critical rewatch where you're really paying attention. Mm-hmm. Okay, I just want to get that out of the way really quick because I don't have a designated spot for talking about the intros. So, of course, this is, it's the WandaVision show, but I do think that the show clearly revolves around Wanda and what is happening to her physically, emotionally, and otherwise. So I love talking about Elizabeth Olsen's performance because I've always thought she was great as Wanda Maximoff, as the Scarlet Witch. But I think outside of maybe like the end of Infinity War, where we got to see some great emotional range, this show is allowing us to see like the full spectrum of her acting capabilities. She's doing comedy. She's starting to do some drama aspects. And I don't think I knew how funny she is. Like, her comedic timing is phenomenal. But I want to talk a little bit about what is happening with Wanda in this episode, because we definitely get some interesting developments.
I should say spoilers ahead.
Yeah.
I think some of the things that we see with her, with Elizabeth Olsen and Wanda, is that she's in control, but then also not in full control. Like she's trying to have control over everything that's happening. Even to the point we were chatting about it, there are multiple times where something has happened that Wanda did not like and basically says no and reverts back on. And so she did not like in this episode where Vision asks some weird questions about the neighbors. There's some stuff that's upsetting to him that he's starting to recognize are wrong. And so he proposes those questions after his conversation with his nosy neighbor Agnes and um, and I'm going blank on the other gentleman neighbor, but they're having a good. Did you have his name?
I did. It's Herb.
Herb, thank you. He comes out and Herb's cutting through the wall, the concrete wall with his
something
head
about that gave me. I know it's early because we haven't gotten into like the 90s yet, but I was getting Home Improvement vibes a little bit from some of the neighbor interaction.
Oh my gosh, totally, absolutely. It makes me think that will we see him doing the fence to right here and talking like Wilson?
That's the shirt I have a Wilson shirt. That's the one I should have been wearing today.
But when Vision comes back inside and he comments that something seems weird, she immediately resets the scene.
Try again.
Lets him try, gives him another shot. So there's this, we are seeing her, but we also see that she is amidst trying to give birth, because we find out they're pregnant, which is also, she's having an attribute to the comics, the breakneck speed birth within a week. And
well, we know that there's a speedy guy in a hurry to be born. I have to talk about the Doctor and Vision or just like some of the puns that he came with like the pregnancy and stuff. I'll let you keep going, but just to say that she gets to reset that. She's not in complete control, but there are some good things that happen with the Doctor when he comes to verify that she's pregnant, and then he asks him to keep it on the down low. There's a lot of good interactions. And like I said earlier, when you and I were just chatting, Paul Bettany is fantastic in this. We really do get to see a better range from Paul Bettany. And Paul Bettany, by the way, is an incredibly versatile actor. Very good. And unfortunately, in Avengers, we never really got to see the breadth of his ability with it. I think the best moment for Vision within all of them is when he picks up Thor's hammer, and he hands it to Thor, kind of like, hey, by the way, you're going to need this. And that's the peak kind of moment for Vision, because we never see the full range of his powers, all these other things. And in this, we get to see him in a vastly different light, really getting a lot of dialogue. He has more dialogue in the first 3 episodes of this than he had in, I think all of the Avengers. One episode. I think by the first episode, it's probably more than any. In the
first episode in the office, when he's just talking to the guy he's giving the paperwork to, he has more dialogue than he did in all of the Avengers. But that's great, and I really love that we get to see a lot of Paul Bettany and also we get to see him in different forms. We get to see Paul Bettany, blonde hair, blue-eyed, glasses. What a hilarious little tribute, glasses to a guy named Vision.
Right.
Who can literally see through things. But
it's like in the second episode. Are you using your night vision?
Yeah. And he's out there. We're going backwards. I don't want to go backwards.
Sorry.
So episode 3, he has the Doctor come over to verify that she's pregnant. And I think one of the things that's hilarious is how fast it's progressing. Like, and then he finally sets it. He's doing the math in his head, and he's like, "Baby's due Friday," and it's like, Wednesday, and she's already midterm.
Oh, maybe I should sit down then.
And then it comes even earlier than that. And that's with the pregnancy is where we really start to see the powers losing a little bit of their control and going a little bit weird.
Which I have some theories about everything going kind of haywire with the pregnancy that we can get into when we start talking about the actual the giving birth.
But I think just to go back to Wanda and Vision, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're seeing a much broader range of acting,
from both of them,
character development. It's been very good, and I'm glad that we finally got an opportunity to explore both of these characters on a deeper level. And the great thing is, 9 episodes at a half hour a piece, or 25 minutes each, we're getting 3.5 hours worth of movie out of this. And we're going to see more character development in here than we got to see for a lot of the characters in the Marvel universe. So,
which makes me even more excited for some of the other upcoming shows. Did you catch when the doctor was kind of comparing fruit sizes to, the different like trimesters and stuff with pregnancy and stuff? He said, right now you're at about a pear. Did you catch why that's funny?
They're twins.
Yeah. And then
they're slipping them in quick.
My fiance loves to always just shoot me looks anytime anybody makes a pun, because it's just kind of what I do. So when he said, Vision said, I can't wait to be a proud papaya, I was like, oh no. And she just glared at me. I was like, oh yeah, that's probably me.
That's a subtle joke that really, if you're not paying attention the first round, that'll catch you the second round. It's kind of like in Dumb and Dumber when Jim Carrey says I fell off the jetway again. And it's the second time when you hear it and you're like, wait a minute, he's done that more than once. So yeah, little puns like that are really good. What I do find weird is, as powerful as Vision and Wanda both are, neither one of them caught on that there was two babies in there.
It's probably
I just work here.
Timing.
So.
So I think that's a good enough transition as any to kind of lead on to the pregnancy, the giving birth, and the hijinks that ensue. And a good chunk of them kind of revolve around Geraldine being in there. But I want to say, when we start getting neighbors, pipes blowing, electricity going off, everyone losing power and things, which we talked about them before the show, that funny moment when I think Dottie comes in and says, do these earrings make me look fat? And then the lights go off and the husband's like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, that is one of the, you cut to that living room and you're like, oh, what's going to happen with this lady? And then when she asked that question, every man's like, don't say it. Don't say a word. Just walk away. Walk away. And then when the lights cut out, and his response of, oh, thank God, is as the relief of, we can change the subject. Yeah. So good. And there's little things like that kind of snuck in between. That one's really good. But you were talking about Geraldine being in the room with Wanda when she's trying to hide the pregnancy. And doing the classic, I'm holding the plant, then I'm holding the fruit. And
different jackets.
Geraldine grabbing a piece of fruit and then almost excusing, oh, you don't want me here. And then she's like, no, tell your story, and has her sit back down, even though she doesn't want her there. But then also the stork coming in. But before the stork, they're in the kitchen, and she changes into the raincoat on accident.
And then the mink, and then she's like,
the mink, and she's like, ooh, this is nice. Almost like, ooh, I like this one. Maybe I can keep this. The rotation for her wardrobe based off of what's going on in her body is pretty hilarious.
I wanted to comment on the magic hijinks because I didn't initially think this way, but of course, I do a little bit of research and I listened to some of the other reviews before we get around to doing ours. And somebody brought up, what if, because Wanda seems surprised by most of the magic things that happen. She's like, oh, I'm just losing control. A lot of people are speculating that it is the unborn Wiccan. It is, and I get which one's Billy and which one's Tommy mixed up. But
Billy should be Wiccan, Tommy should be Speed.
Thank you very much. So this would be Billy then, possibly already reaching out to his magic capabilities to the outside world, or at least to her reality, bringing the stork to life, kind of causing all the mayhem, because it seems very uncontrolled and chaotic. And up until this point, at least from what we've seen in the show, Wanda seems to have a handle on her powers, or at least how she uses them in this sitcom universe. And this kind of seemed very much like she didn't know what was happening, and everything seemed like reactionary.
Yes. Well, and kind of, if you're touching on that, maybe that's Wiccan that's causing some of that magic to happen in a weird way. Well, that's the same way that Speed is causing this pregnancy to go at a breakneck rate.
Also, who was born first, right? Wasn't that Tommy? First out the gate.
That would be, that's accurate. Tommy was first. And then it's not until, because she had settled on Tommy because Vision wanted Billy.
Do you remember why?
And Wanda wanted Tommy because it's an all-American name.
And Billy?
And Vision threw out Billy, I thought, and I can't remember exactly.
William Shakespeare.
Which, by the way, I was going to make a reference to the Shakespeare quote: "All the world
Yeah.
is a stage, and all men and women are merely players."
Come on now. The
Great, and
script
then
writers of this show are just on another plane of referential wisdom. It's incredible.
yeah, it's the slipping of, I guess, Easter eggs, if you want to call them that. You have to really be paying attention, and if you are listening to everything and really searching it out, it's really good. But yeah, Tommy and Billy could have been influencing a lot of what's happening on the outside from the inside. Uh, and we will discover, I'm sure, later on exactly how um, various their powers may be.
I guess we should take like a 15-second pause and just say, for any of you listening that aren't familiar with Speed and Wiccan, so in the comics, I believe it initially started around the House of M storyline and then bled over into the New Avengers when they were brought back into existence. Wiccan and Speed, Billy and Tommy, are Wanda's two twin boys that she basically manifested into existence in the comics with the help of Mephisto, who hopefully I have an opportunity to bring back the topic of Mephisto moving forward. One of them is made kind of in the likeness of her brother Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, and he has a speed ability. And then Wiccan, of course, taking over a lot of her chaos magic capabilities and destined to become the next Sorcerer Supreme, succeeding Doctor Strange. So that is something we might be able to see years down the road in the movies based off of their we're assuming expedited growth. You know, they got
Yes.
that clone trooper growth hormone, you know.
Yeah, they could be, by the end of the series, they could be teenagers. Who knows?
They could.
But yeah, the other things in there with Geraldine still being confused as to what her role is and what she's doing, and she's kind of sneaking her way around the house, works her way into the nursery, and that's where you find out that Geraldine finds out that Wanda's pregnant. But the stork works its way in and then poses perfectly with the stork painting on the wall, and kind of sets the stage. And then Geraldine is the one who helps deliver the babies, or the first baby.
Yeah,
she helps deliver Tommy. And then she's present for the remaining, because Vision finally shows up with a doctor, and there's some key things between Vision and the doctor that are stated.
Right, when she said my water, she says my water broke and it starts raining and stuff, and then Vision takes off to the doctor.
Yeah, and that's a little bit earlier on. But okay, I'm fast forwarding past some stuff. But they're in the kitchen. They do the move arounds. They come back. But after Tommy's born, Vision shows back up. The doctor helps deliver. Wanda goes and she's helping care for the babies. And Vision goes back outside with the doctor to kind of send the doctor away. And that's where we see Agnes, the nosy neighbor, and Herb, who still has cut through the wall, hasn't even taken the clippers out of it yet. In that weird spot, they're having a conversation, almost like trying to Truman Show-esque, like hint at each other, hey, like change the subject, kind of ignore what's going on. But one of the things I loved with Vision and the doctor right before there is the doctor goes, well, you know, these small towns, it's impossible to escape. Which
I got uncomfortable several times in this episode.
Yeah, well, we'll get to the ads later, but there's one of the ads that hints to some of the issues that may be going on here. But then with that, in that room, Wanda starts to get really uncomfortable with Geraldine asking questions, and she makes the comment that might have been one of the most telltale things in the entire episode about Ultron.
Yep.
That he's heard that voice before in Ultron.
Well, she said, she brings up Pietro. She's like, I used to be a twin, and I had a brother. His name was Pietro. And then Geraldine says, Ultron killed your brother, didn't he? And then it's like, snap, and we lose sitcom Wanda. And all of a sudden, all the pain, all the anger, and like everything goes right back to Elizabeth Olsen's face. And I instantly, the second I saw that, and you could feel it in not only did we get her singing a Sokovian lullaby to her newborn babies, but also I think you can hear her Sokovian accent slipping back in a little bit as she's talking to Geraldine, asking her about what she said. And as the anger and uncomfortable aura of the scene starts to rise, you feel it more and more, or you can hear it more, I should say.
They, well, and when Vision comes back in, Geraldine's gone. Oh, she needed to go home.
She left in a rush.
Oh yeah. It was very almost ominous in that moment.
And then she like smiles, like she doesn't look uncomfortable anymore. She looks like confident, and I'm like,
Yeah, again, hinting to the same thing where she had Vision remake his statement because she didn't like the way it went. When as soon as Geraldine brought the outside world into this fantasy world that they're living in, as soon as that happened, Wanda was like, "You're gone."
And I guess we should talk about the kind of the dichotomy in scenes between Wanda and Geraldine talking, and Wanda figuring out that something's up with Geraldine, and then Vision talking to Agnes and Herb about there's something up with Geraldine. It's like, she's not married, she doesn't have a house, she's not from here, and they're telling Vision all these things. And then so when he goes in the house to check on her, she's already gone, like you said.
Yeah, it's one of those moments where the not the fourth wall is broken, but like the continuity of what's happening gets shifted, and suddenly it's like, okay, well, something's wrong here. We've got to Wanda takes action to set it right back the way she wants it.
Right. And I think with talking about Geraldine is a good opportunity to bring up Sword, because I've been trying to bring up Sword in every discussion because their presence is becoming more and more known, all the way back to the very first episode when we see that somebody's actually watching or surveilling WandaVision as like the show or world that it is. We see that Geraldine has a sword necklace, and Wanda asks what it is. Geraldine seems to be like maybe starting to recollect something, but can't quite put her finger on it. And I think that kind of leads to some of the conflict. And when she gets booted out, I am assuming that those are sword agents or employees that are coming up to her when she leaves the world. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, I had a question in the first two episodes wondering is Westview completely manufactured by Wanda, or was it an existing town that Wanda like had a hostile takeover of and just like changed the reality of there? And I think I got my question answered, because when Geraldine gets kicked out, there is a sign for Westview as like a neighborhood. And so that makes me think that a lot of these people that we thought maybe were constructs of her mind and of her abilities might be real people that are being influenced by Wanda, all of them. And so not only is Wanda trapped in this world, but we have innocent civilians, or maybe not innocent civilians. We could have Hydra members, we could have Sword members. Obviously, we already have one. So it'd be interesting to find out what the backstory is, or what the significance is of all these side characters.
Well, and that in one of the ads, I believe in episode 1, had a logo on one of the products that actually had the sword logo. And then in this episode, the commercials had Hydra backdrops, Hydra soap, which, well, I'll go ahead and just say it. That's hinted at in, I believe, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that Coulson talks about the fact that Hydra had mind control soap. And then we see Hydra Soak luxury bath powder that might be the mind control soap, which is causing them, which is why a lot of these people don't know what's exactly going on. They're literally just playing a role within all of this. And so perhaps that's what's creating the environment. So whether it's Sword or whether it's Hydra or both somehow, certainly, like I said at the very beginning, this episode created more questions than the first two. And this one certainly made you go, wait a minute, what the heck is going on now?
And I think it also raised a lot of questions for me, or just increased my speculation about Agnes, because before the show even came out, when we started seeing commercials and they showed Agnes like dressed up as a witch for Halloween, the general consensus is that she's got to be Agatha Harkness from the comics, who has a very like a reoccurring role in Wanda's life in the comics. And some of the hints that we've gotten is not only like the witch costume, but she's got like a brooch or a pendant that is a recurring part of her outfit throughout the episodes. Also, maybe this is looking too hard, but you take Agatha Harkness, Agnes, and you put that together. There's just a lot of hinting towards that. Also, you have all these side characters that seem confused by their existence or relevancy in this universe. Agnes seems sure of herself throughout. She doesn't seem to have the weird glitches. It's like she seems like she's very aware of what's going on, or at least in these episodes so far. So it makes me wonder, if she is Agatha Harkness, what is her role? Do we have several people involved in this? Like you have Sword, you have Hydra potentially, maybe Agatha Harkness, and then there's the idea that people are talking about, if they're taking inspiration from the comics, you might have Mephisto, which is basically Marvel's devil, and that's what people have speculated. Evan Peters might be playing Mephisto. There's a lot of room for speculation, and then Mephisto could also very much tie in to Doctor Strange too, if we're talking about dealing with the multiverses and stuff like that, which we know this show is tying in to the multiverse of madness. So what are your thoughts on Agnes? Do you think she has a much larger role to play moving forward?
Absolutely. As the nosy neighbor, um, she's kind of got her hand in everything, almost like she's trying to guide Wanda through a lot of this.
A little
And
bit
she
of a
seems
puppet
to
master.
be correct. She's kind of just not, she's never missing. She's always right there on the fringe. Like everything's happening inside. She's in the front yard. And she only leaves when Vision approaches. And so there's a lot of things that can go. It would make sense for that character to kind of fill that role and do that. Certainly, it wouldn't surprise me. Marvel lays deep Easter eggs. Kind of even with Geraldine is actually Monica Rambeau, and the young version of Monica Rambeau was seen in Captain Marvel,
Right.
and she brings the Gravityos cereal, which also, again, it's deep layers into everything that's going on. You got to really pay attention, but
You have to listen
Agnes,
to every line of the show. Like all of them are, like you said, just like thick with Easter eggs and references.
absolutely, and they did such a great job of pulling from comics, from cartoons, from movies, and tying it all together in such a powerful way. And now that they've introduced the multiverse, you can do literally anything. All you got to do is hint at what you intended, and you can draw the correlations. So yeah, Agnes, and I have a feeling Agnes is going to play a large role in this, whether it's as kind of a support to Wanda to help bust out of whatever's happening, or she's there as a tool of Hydra to try and help keep Wanda in line. That's the question that will be told. Is she there to help, or is she an antagonist or protagonist kind of character?
And I guess pun intended, but Agatha Harkness is known to play both sides of the fence.
Yep.
I'm on a
Perfect. Then it will be impossible until the end of this to really tell whose side she's on.
Or is she an independent?
As a double agent. Correct. So again, lots of things to think about as this comes forward.
And I think, well, I guess one of my last questions would be, if you had to speculate, because for the most part, that's all we can do. We don't have a lot of concrete anything as far as the show goes. How much of this do you think Wanda is responsible for? Do you think she was the one to initially create this universe, or was she pushed in that direction and is just kind of living in it? Because as I say in that Hydra Soak commercial, like, looking for like a paradise to escape to, and become a goddess and like all this stuff, which she basically is in this world. There's nobody like her other than Vision. And I think there's a lot of little like idiosyncrasies like that in the commercials. So I guess, yeah, my question to you is just how much is Wanda? How much do you think is outside forces? Is it a mixture of all of it?
I don't know yet. Literally, I even had the thought, is this timeline wise? Do we know timeline wise where this is?
It is confirmed to be after Endgame. But I don't know how far after Endgame, but we know Vision has passed.
Okay, so that was what I was hinting at is, okay, so is Vision a creation of Wanda? Is
Or
she only there because he's created her or revived, or sorry, because she's created him or revived him back to life? Also, was she so distraught after the death and everything that's happened that she's allowed herself to be put into something like this?
right.
Um, those are some things. Or was she caught unawares and now is being manipulated? Perhaps they're trying to weaponize her in some way or find a
What
way to study her more closely. She was in intense studies when she was in Sokovia, when her and Pietro were weapons essentially for Hydra. That they were doing mass experiments to see if they could figure out her powers. And it's one of those things. Did they give her the powers, or were her powers natural and they enhanced the powers? How did that all come about? Lots of
well,
questions there. And I think that I tend to lean that they're using this environment, but she is creating it from within.
yeah, I think that's a really good standpoint on that. Did you see that they changed the meaning of the acronym SWORD? In the
No, what was
comics, it was sentient worlds, something, something, something. It's now sentient weapon.
sentient
And
weapon observation response division? There we go.
yeah, which that very much sounds like they're kind of observing maybe Wanda and potentially Vision if she actually managed to, because we know the twins are going to come into play, even though they are manufactured in this artificial reality. Um, are we going to see her lose it? Because in the comics, she lost her children, and that's part of what drove her absolutely mad, multiverse of madness. Um, and then at some point, she's able to bring them back into reality, and then we have the teenage Speed and Wiccan. Who knows how that's all going to play out? I think we're going to see a lot of that
Thank
explored.
God Evan Peters. Thank God Evan Peters is young enough and looks young enough to still pull off playing a teenager, early 20 Speed.
Yeah,
He's got that youthful, boyish look.
but
The question is he going to play both Wiccan and Speed?
I think that's a good
And
question.
again, you pointed to it. He could play Mephisto. He could play a bunch of other things, right? I really want him to be Speed.
I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Just as a complete tribute to, because also, by the way, I absolutely love him as Quicksilver in the X-Men movies. He's one of the highlights. The scenes with him in the slow motion, with him listening to the music as he's racing around, are so well done.
Time in a bottle.
Yeah. Oh, so good. But so
And Sweet Dreams, I think, was the second song.
yes. So there's the question as to whether or not they're real. Also, is Vision real?
Yeah.
Are the babies even real?
Mm-hmm.
Did these actually happen? Are they real beings? Boy, in the crib, they look like it. But how will that progress?
I would say, just going to Evan Peters just for a second, seeing the roles that he's played in American Horror Story, I definitely think he could also pull off Mephisto. I think it's just kind of it's a wide range of possibilities for him as an actor. I think at some point the speculation's got to hit a brick wall, and we just got to let absorb the show, because there's so many different possibilities. Who knows? And you don't want to set expectations, lean on them too hard, because they might do a different route that is as good or better. So
and so sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask if there's any last thoughts you have for the show.
I think I was reading one thing that was asking questions about they're living in as a place to kind of keep witches under control, people with powers similar to Wanda's. So is this a situation where people with powers are being taken and put into one area using mind control soap in order to control and monitor superheroes? They're trying to harness them and put them in one community with brainwashing.
Maybe like a bit of a prison, kind of like they have in the comics. They have the negative zone, and like Dimension X, then they have the raft and all these different like shield facilitated jails and stuff like that.
Well, one of the things noted that it might be the Sokovia Accords were one of those things where they were trying to monitor the heroes and keep track of everybody. And this might be a means by putting them into a community and using the Hydra soap and using brainwashing and control to harness them. So is this a situation where they're going to have to revolt and break out, and they're going to release powers within many of the people?
That's something I hadn't heard before, but I think that's a fascinating theory.
So again, this episode did more for the series. Did more than the first two episodes did as far as leading things. There's another song from the show is Daydream Believer by the Monkees, which, you know, the idea that this is all a dream. This is not reality. Again, perfect songs with perfect lyrics, hinting at what's happening around.
The show's so smart.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the last thing is when that song's playing, the last thing is when Geraldine gets launched out and then surrounded. It kind of, that's where we first have that. I guess they did it at the very end of episode 1 with the guy watching the monitor. Episode 2 didn't really have anything at the end. Episode 3, we get this, okay, the military is surrounding this. We have a helicopter flying over, keeping a spotlight on her. We have trucks coming in with armed people surrounding her. What's going on? How do they put her back into the world? What's going to happen? What Monica's powers necessarily within this, or does she have any, or what's her role?
Or does she get him?
So many questions that make me want to. So many questions that make me want to see episode 4 right now.
And we've seen a lot, or almost all of what has been in the trailers so far. The things that still remain sticking out to me that we haven't seen yet are where some of my largest speculation comes from. And that is, there is a shot that is not in the sitcom world. It is Wanda in typical Wanda clothes, her regular garb, looking kind of distraught. And it looks like she's looking up at like the levitating Mind Stone or a yellow light. And there's like an explosion. And I can't tell if it's like played in reverse or she's trying to put it together. Is she trying to remanufacture I might have said Time Stone. I meant Mind Stone.
Mind Stone.
Yeah, for Vision, to bring Vision back to life. Because they still have the body, right? If they can get the Mind Stone together and like rebuild, you know, she gets Vision. I don't know, but I'm
would play
fixated
in really
on that image from the trailers.
Yeah, and that would play. Maybe that's just a nod to what happened with everything going on with you know, she blew up Vision, but then at the same time Thanos reversed time, took that back out, so it's not destroyed anymore. It was already put back together. He snapped them and killed all the Infinity Stones, so those are gone. So in that scenario, unless we're in a multiverse, how does she use her powers to recreate a Mind Stone to bring life back to him?
One thing I would say that is important is Vision has, I believe it was Vision himself that said how she is connected to the Mind Stone, being that her powers were brought about from the Mind Stone. So maybe she is an original source of like Mind Stone, like the powers of the Mind Stone. And so like maybe she has like remnants of the stone. So if anything was able to recreate the stone or a fragment of the stone, it would be Wanda.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. Again, all kinds of good questions that this episode laid out for. We've got 6 more episodes. And I'll be honest, at this point, the only thing I can say about all of this is at some point they're going to break out. And that's it. That's the only thing that I feel confident in saying, that they're inside some kind of government-controlled reality that's being controlled in large part by Wanda and her powers. And the question will be, how do they escape? And I'm really looking forward to the Halloween episode when we get to see Vision in the comic book Green and Yellow. Ooh.
And Paul Bettany.
with the high collar.
Yeah. Paul Bettany has said that like the vast majority of the budget's in the second half of the series. And when you think about us being only a third the way through the season and you get a little bit more perspective, holy cow, where is this going to go in 6 episodes? Like,
I will say
we just got a foot in the water right now.
This is you touched on it earlier, as a first act to the season. This is perfect. This is a perfect first act, and we'll see how they close it out. But again, you and I have discussed this. There's 0 points in time when I've not had faith that Marvel knew what they were doing. Like,
well, Iron Man 3 for
this
me,
had
but
this,
that's beside the point.
but this had to run past Kevin Feige or Feige or whatever.
Kevin Feige.
Feige. I'm never going to try and say it right. I'm always going to say it's Feige or something. But this had to run by his desk. And if there is somebody who you can trust to maintain continuity and ensure that it's done right, it's that guy. There was an interview I read this last week about by Ben Affleck, and he was asked about Kevin Feige, and he said he's the super producer. He is his mind is so much further advanced and better at keeping all this stuff together that he's incredible.
And he's so in tune with the fans.
Oh my gosh, he knows what the fans want, and even when the fans don't think they want it, he gives them something that they're like, "Ooh, that was delicious."
Oh, you never could have predicted the show in a million years.
I'll be honest. When I heard about WandaVision, I was like, it's kind of like Black Widow. I don't really need this. Those story arcs are over. And now that we're having it, I'm like, oh, it's so stinking good. And that's with me thinking after I watched the first episode, wow, I'm not sure I'm going to like this. And then the second episode was a little better. Third episode was like, I got it. Okay, I'm getting it. And I cannot wait for the Stranger Things-esque 80s episodes when they come.
Yeah.
Because that's my wheelhouse when I was a kid. You give me that 80s, 90s. And if we're getting 2 episodes per thing, that means we're finishing this puppy out in that 90s realm.
Yeah.
Or early 2000s.
And
that's right where this guy grew up.
Hopefully everyone joins us next week when we get into episode 4, or as we were discussing, basically act 2 of WandaVision. Watch the mystery unfold, see what happens to Geraldine moving forward, and Agnes and all that good stuff. So thank you guys so much for joining us on another installment of the Flick and Reel Fancast. We will hopefully see you next week. And lastly, we really want to grow this channel and devote more time and energy to making informative and entertaining content for years to come. But this can only be achieved by support from you guys. So please don't forget to click that subscribe button or follow if you're following us on any of the audio formats, and hit the bell icon to be notified anytime that we release news breakdowns, trailer reaction, or reviews. Just remember to always keep it real. Thanks. See you guys later.